Access denied. That is what a manipulator feels when you stop answering their audit questions. But for a high-control person, your silence is not an end. It is a challenge. They are moving up the escalation ladder. This is the sequence they use to see if your boundary is a permanent wall or a temporary bluff. First, they repeat the question. Then, they pressure your timing. Finally, they try to make your calm silence feel like an act of aggression. To stop them, you need a low-information shield. These 5 answers do not win the argument. They cut off the access. Let's look at level 1, the pressure repeat and the first phrase that stops it. When you first stop explaining yourself, a manipulator's move is simple. They repeat the question, but with forced urgency. They want to see if you will fold under the social pressure of a long silence. They ask, "I need an answer now. Why are you being so difficult?" Your first shield is, "That doesn't work for me." No explanation, no apology. Here is why this phrase makes them lose control. They want you inside their frame. If you say, "I'm not being difficult, I just need more time," because the conversation is no longer about the request. It is about proving you are not difficult. "That doesn't work for me," responds without feeding the accusation. At work, it becomes, "That timeline is not feasible." At home, "I'm not available for that right now." The question itself is not the proof. The punishment after your boundary is. Normal urgency accepts a no or a delay. Manipulation audits it. So watch what happens after the shield. If they respect it, you may be dealing with pressure, not manipulation. If they punish it, you are seeing the pattern. When speed does not work, they stop pressing the clock. They start pressing your identity. This is where the character audit begins. Why are you so quiet? You are acting weird today. You never used to be like this. Why are you making this so awkward? Sometimes that question is harmless, but a manipulator uses it as a label. Weird, difficult, cold, sensitive, suspicious. Now the test is your self-image. Will you rush to prove you are not the label? That is the mistake. You say, "I'm not being weird, I'm just tired," or "I'm not trying to be rude." The moment you start defending your personality, they have moved the conversation onto your character. They are not listening to your words. They are noting which labels make you flinch so they can use them again. Later. Your second shield is, "I'm not answering that like this." That phrase does not defend the label. It rejects the method. You are not saying, "I am not weird." You are saying, "This frame is not valid." At work, it is, "I'll discuss the work, not my personality." At home, "I'm not comfortable with the way you're asking." That is not rude, that is clean. It says, "I can talk about the real issue, but not inside a distorted frame." This is where they start losing control of your reaction. These phrases do not make the other person stop being difficult. They stop the other person from using your words to manage you. Levels 1 and 2 stop the noise, but level 3 is a transition from your character to your data. They stop attacking who you are and start mining for your why so they can negotiate against it. This is the goal probe. It sounds reasonable. I'm just trying to understand your logic. What are you really trying to achieve here? Why does this matter so much to you? Healthy people ask why so they can understand you. Manipulators ask why so they can find the lever. If you say, "I do not want to go because I am tired," they negotiate your tiredness. It will only be an hour. Your reason gives them the map. And in a high-pressure audit, too much explanation becomes privacy leakage. The mistake is giving the full internal file. To you, it is an explanation. To them, it is a list of vulnerabilities they can negotiate against until your no disappears. Your third shield is, what's the goal of that question? This is questioning the question. It turns the forensic light back on the person asking. Instead of giving them your internal logic, you ask them to reveal their purpose. At work, it is, can you clarify the business need for that data? At home, are you asking because you're worried or because you want me to change my mind? That question is not an attack. It is a filter. A good faith person can answer it. A manipulator often gets irritated because the audit has been interrupted. They expected you to open the file. Instead, you asked why they were requesting access. You are no longer the subject being audited, you are now the manager of the access. And when they cannot get your data, they try to hijack your time. This is the forced decision. If you cannot tell me now, I will just assume the answer is no. If you cared, you would know right away. If you have to think about it, that tells me everything. You do not want to look indecisive. You do not want to lose the opportunity, so you say yes just to stop the pressure, or you say no aggressively because you feel cornered. Either way, they got you to react on their clock. The fourth shield is, I'll answer when I've had time to think. This is not passive. This is not asking for permission. This is you reclaiming the status of time. At work, give a real return time. At home, say you will come back when you are not pressured. Do not debate the deadline they invented. Do not argue with the accusation. Do not rush to prove you care. Make time part of your boundary. A manipulator wants real-time access. They want your answer while your nervous system is under pressure. A delayed answer breaks that. It tells them, you do not get to use urgency as a shortcut around my judgment. Now use this carefully. These are defense-only tools. If you use them too early with someone respectful, you'll look avoidant. These aren't for friends, they're for audits. The trigger is the pattern, pressure, punishment, probing, negative labeling, forced urgency. Negotiating against your reasons. Recruiting others to break your no. That is when these shields become necessary. Not to be cold, not to be difficult, but to stop your words from becoming handles they can grab. We have covered the first 4 levels. Before we hit the final shield, the one for when they try to recruit an audience, tell me this. Which phrase feels most dangerous to say out loud? That doesn't work for me. I'm not answering that like this. What's the goal of that question? Or, I'll answer when I've had time to think. No story required. The hardest phrase is usually the boundary they trained you not to use. If these 4 have not stopped them, they move to the final stage. Recruitment. They stop trying to convince you, they start trying to shame you. This is when the pressure becomes social. They bring in the team, the family, the group, the imaginary consensus. The consensus is that we are all pitching in on this. Most people in the family find it easier to just go along with it. Everyone else thinks you are being unreasonable. This level attacks belonging. When it feels like the group is watching, people start explaining again. Who said that? That is not fair. I am not trying to make things hard for everyone. Now they are defending themselves against a crowd that may not even exist. That is the trap. The mistake is arguing with everyone, because in manipulation, everyone is not a person. It is a ghost jury used to bypass your boundary. Your 5th shield is, I've already given you my answer. That is the final wall, not loud, not emotional, not dramatic, just closed. In a workplace, it may sound like, my position on this has not changed. Let's get back to the agenda. In a relationship, it may sound like, I am not discussing this with everyone. I have given you my answer, and that is where I am leaving it. At level 5, more words create more openings. If they are recruiting others, they are trying to outnumber your boundary, so you do not feed the room, you return to the answer. I've already given you my answer. That is what access denied means. It does not mean you never communicate. It means you stop giving fresh material to someone who has already shown you they will use your words against you. Subscribe if you want to get harder to pressure. Join us in holding the line. Once you can see the 5 levels, the behavior becomes less confusing. Speed, character, data, timing, audience, and the answer gets shorter each time. That doesn't work for me. I'm not answering that like this. What's the goal of that question? I'll answer when I've had time to think. I've already given you my answer. As the pressure rises, your response becomes more boring, not colder, not crueler, just less useful to the person trying to harvest you. You stop proving you are reasonable to someone who benefits from making you feel unreasonable. You stop handing over reasons they can negotiate against. You hold the line, and sometimes they will not like it. That reaction is not always proof you did something wrong. Sometimes it is proof the supply was cut off. A manipulator does not leave because they learned their lesson. They leave because you became an unprofitable target. Denying access is only half the battle. Now that you have stopped the harvest, you need to know the first test they will use next time. They test whether you explain too much. They test whether you apologize too fast. They test whether you bend when the pressure is still small. That first test is where the targeting starts. That is analyzed right here.